let's talk about you actually looking at the vehicle. So you met her at a mechanic shop.
Right.
You claim you looked at it and it seemed fine. And you said the mechanic at the shop told you that the car was in perfect condition. Did he show you any documentation that the car had been worked on?
No, basically he just worked on it that day when he changed all the spark plugs and the ignition coil. And he told me that this car would last a very long time and there's no issues in it.
Ms. Gonzalez, how long had you been working with a mechanic? Was that your personal mechanic?
Yes, it was my personal mechanic, but I've only known him for like about a year.
Mr. Abdul Karim, why didn't you bring your own? That was an option.
Right. Well, I just decided to take her word for it at a mechanic shop. It was like a legit mechanic shop, you know, licensed and everything. So I figured there's a mechanic, trustworthy, so.
So you negotiated the cost down to $5,700?
Right.
And Ms. Gonzalez, why did you go down from $6,600?
I was pretty desperate at the time. My motorhome had gotten stolen, so I needed the money, and I had 2 vehicles at the time, which I also offered to sell him the other vehicle. He chose to have the Prius for the fact that it was economic, so I just left it as that.
So start explaining to me what sort of issues you started experiencing and how soon after buying the car did you start experiencing these issues?
Very next morning, when the engine was cold, when I started up the car, it had this like violent shaking at first for a few seconds, and then it goes away.
You didn't notice that the day you looked at the car, you didn't start the car?
No, it's because the engine was already warm. That violent shakes only happens on the cold engine.
What else?
After that, I took it to 2 different mechanics to make sure what's going on, and it needed a new head gasket. And I took it to detailing, and after he took out the seats and the carpet, he noticed that there were thousands of roaches inside the car.
Wait, when you get a car detailed, you take the seats out?
It's optional. It depends on the condition of how bad it needs a detail.
So they took the seats out of the car. You
Right.
have
So
pictures, right?
if you look at the pictures on Exhibit B, you can see the seats before the seats were taken out.
This is the seats that you're saying you could
Right.
see from the outside.
Right, that's what I saw.
You saw this and you were
Yeah,
okay with it?
that was like vomit, and I'm not sure what that is, but there were no insects out.
Right, but the vomit and all that, the stains, you saw it. You checked the car out.
I did.
So you were aware of that, right?
Yeah, I was aware of that.
You weren't aware of the bugs
Right.
underneath the seat, and it took the detailing folks to lift the seats up.
The reason why he took the seats out because, you know, it's easiest for him to pressure wash the seats to get all of that stains off.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's when he started noticing all the bugs.
That is crazy.
So if you go through the pictures, you can see what me and the detailer found, just bugs.
Ms. Gonzalez, were you aware? I mean, I guess you wouldn't be aware of
Well,
bugs.
I'm the second owner of the vehicle.
Okay.
So for 10 years and a half, I didn't own that vehicle. So for only a year and a half, I owned the vehicle. I never took off the seats. I never did a super clean. And when I got it, the surface looked nice.
This is pretty bad. So what other issues were you experiencing?
Well, aside from the detailing, a week later, something came up on the dash. It said that check the hybrid system. So I took it to a specialized Prius shop for hybrid batteries. And it said that it needs a new hybrid battery fan because the insects got to the fan and it wasn't circulating like it should.
So you're experiencing all these issues, a battery fan, leaking coolant, head gasket issues, and then you reach out to the defendant and say what?
I didn't reach out all at once. I reached out as I found problems. I let her know that there was something going on with the shaking before I found out it needed a new head gasket. And basically, the defendant just shut me down, said that it was sold as is. Basically, that's my issue.
Were you willing to accept some money? Because I did notice in a text.
At first, I was. But as I found more problems, I was willing to work with her, but she wasn't willing to work with me. That's when I decided that I'm not gonna accept even a partial anymore. Like, I want the whole thing.
Ms. Gonzalez, these issues, I mean, you had a mechanic say the car was in perfect condition.
On the day that I sold the car, that day, they did the spark plugs and the coil, and that's what we thought was wrong with it, and he bought it that day. For the future stuff that is going on, I can't predict the future, so unfortunately, I didn't know that other
Were you aware
issues.
of the shaking?
I was aware of the shaking, but my mechanic had said that if I changed the spark plugs, that would be one of the issues, and if not, then the coils. So we checked all the coils, and they only said one looked bad. That's all we did, and then that day that I did the work, I sold it.
Why weren't you willing to at least work with the plaintiff, considering all of the issues that he was experiencing just a few days after taking the car?
Well, since I dropped my price, since it was listed at $6,600, I already dropped enough of the price because my Prius was one of the lowest miles out of all the Priuses that were posted there. So I thought it was a fair price.